Welcome to Off Panel.
Welcome to the prophesied return of Off Panel, an interview podcast hosted by yours truly, David Harper. I want to give a quick shout out to the band Wolfpack. They gave me permission to use their excellent track Outro from their album Volmilch as Off Panel's new theme music. Thanks, guys. Now, on to the guest. This week's return episode brings a guest back to the show. He writes about basketball, video games, comics, and perhaps most famously, Game of Thrones at The Ringer. You may know him as The Maester or Network. It's Jason Concepcion. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me back.
So, I have to ask, has anyone ever referred to you as the Maester in person?
I think I want to say yes.
Yeah?
Like just when I first meet them, it's happened.
They just like shake your hand and you're like, you're the Maester, aren't you?
And it happens like online.
Yeah.
While gaming and stuff, that happens.
Well, your like gamer ID isn't like the Maester or something, is
no,
it?
it's Network.
Oh, okay. Do they just get on there and excitedly ask you then?
Yeah, they'll be like, "Are you the actual Network?" That's happened.
Oh, that's hilarious. So the reason why I have you on the show this week is to talk about comic book movies, and there's good reason for that because DC dropped their latest opus on us, Suicide Squad. It came from director David Ayer. I think it's pronounced Ayer. And it has a fantastic cast. It looked like it could be, I don't know, based off YouTube views, it seemed like it was going to be, like, at least entertaining and, like, a gigantic hit. And it was that. It opened at #1 with $135 million in box office, just domestically. But it got really terrible reviews. We both saw it. I'm very curious. What did you think of DC's latest Greatest Hope?
Well, first, let me just say that I did have like really high hopes for this. I was a big fan of the original Ostrander series, and I think just structurally, this is kind of like how DC should have started with like kind of like low stakes heroes that can die.
Yeah.
You know, what I mean? Like where you're not like, oh well, this person is going to triumph because we need to make 5 movies. Like that's kind of how they should have started. And I thought it was not as bad as a lot of reviews made it out to be.
Right.
But it's not good. It was pretty incoherent, which is kind of like a David Ayer trademark, unfortunately, in a lot of his movies. And if I don't know if you read that Hollywood Reporter story about which basically said that once DC/Warner Brothers got the first cut of the movie, they kind of panicked, and because the trailer had gotten such great feedback, people loved the trailer. They had the company that cut the trailer come in and cut the movie.
Oh my god!
Which so I mean, I guess that's why it's kind of incoherent, and it's really is like 20 trailers just kind of like all stapled together. I mean, it really wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, but it was not. It was not good. The character development was like nil. It kind of just ambles from plot point to plot point without any kind of like obvious connection to the like. There will be scenes where it seems like characters are talking to each other as if they know each other, but it's the first time they've ever met in the movie. So you just feel like there's a lot of shit missing from this movie that was in there. Yeah. That doesn't make any sense. This should have been a fun movie, and it was marginally fun, but not really.
It seems like, we haven't gotten into it yet, but I should give a general spoiler warning. We're not going to talk about Suicide Squad the whole time, but if you have not seen it yet, you probably want to avoid it. I do want to bring up one thing that you talked about there, which is you talked about how the characters seemed like they knew each other. And I thought one of the like accidentally funniest parts of the movie was like El Diablo, when he goes and he's like, I already lost one family. I don't want to lose another one. And I'm just like, wait, what?
Yeah, I know. Like,
all of them have yelled at you for this entire movie for being a pussy, basically. Yeah. And like all of a sudden he's like, I don't want to lose my family. I'm like, I don't know about this. I think you need better families. You're a terrible family man.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of like the conceit of the movie is that it happens all in one night.
Right.
So it's like he had just been released basically from like a water-filled chamber, ostensibly like 3.5 hours before he said this.
Yeah.
Like there's no character arc whatsoever to any of these like relationships, to anything. It just seems like microwave movie making. It's bizarre.
Yeah,
bizarre.
It is really interesting because you were talking about how like they went from plot point to plot point, but it was like it almost kind of didn't really have a plot.
Yeah.
Like it was like Enchantress, like her whole thing was kind of, it wasn't much of a thing. She was like, I want to make a like Pokestop that will destroy the world. And I don't really know what like her end game was. She was just like, I hate them because they like their cell phones more than me. This sucks. Brother, let's do it.
See, that's another problem. So much of what DC's been doing lately is just transparently reactionary, because they're like, oh shit, we should have been Marvel movies.
Right.
We should have been doing those because like Batman Begins came out like 2006?
Yeah, like 2005, 2006, yeah.
Right. So it's like, that's probably a year to a year and a half before Iron Man. Like that should be us. We should have been doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And so with the villain, why does it have to be they save the world the first? Like, can't you like work up to that? Like, this is another it's just weird construction. Like, normally in a movie like this, and I'm not saying like they all should all be cookie cutter, but like there's a reason why this structure works. Is like they would go on some kind of smaller stakes mission somewhere else. It's not just like, oh, let them out of prison and go save the world right now.
Right.
There would be something else, and there was just none of that. It was just like there is absolutely no arc, and so much of like the relationships are just like them saying, "Oh, yeah, I care about you now. Yeah, you're my family now." Wait, what? Like, there's no. You didn't see any of that develop. There was no feeling that developed. Like all of a sudden, Deadshot and Harley like care about each other or like each other for some reason because the Joker maybe died. Like it just doesn't. It made zero sense.
Well, they didn't reveal the fact that Focus was actually backstory for that movie, and like their relationship from that built into their Deadshot and Harley relationship. That is not actually true. I hope it's not true.
Yeah. Well, there's the thing, like, the one thing I kind of did like about the New 52 reboot of Suicide Squad is, like, the subplot of just Harley trying to escape the Joker's influence.
Mm-hmm.
With the kind of, I guess, like, not really great love triangle with Deadshot, but that would have been more interesting than what we saw.
Right.
And this is kind of like a David Ayer thing, though. I don't know how many movies of his that you've seen, but
I liked Fury. Like it wasn't a perfect movie, but it was like, as far as like gritty tank movies, it was actually pretty good. Like for World War II, I actually thought it was pretty well done, and I thought the cast, he handled the cast well. I like, that's the one thing that I really would like to see is, like, I'm not saying this is going to be a situation where it automatically becomes a much better movie if you see the David Ayer cut or something like that. But like you were saying, it feels like a bunch of different movies jammed into one, because you can see the parts where David Ayer is like playing it hardcore, and like you can see the parts where they're trying really hard to make it fun and entertaining and everything, and it just. It feels like tonally like a roller coaster. And like beyond that, I really felt that it was, I didn't think it was it certainly wasn't as bad as a lot of the critics made it seem. It's not like it's not Manos Hands of Fate.
No, it's not. Yeah, it's not Fantastic Four.
Like, yeah, exactly. But it does have high points, and it has really low points. And like the fact that it's just a complete mess, and it is just like it's edited incomprehensibly, and there's just some really weird choices. Like, I know this is really petty of me, but like the very first scene where they have like they're going up, like zooming into like the prison and everything, in the bottom right corner it says something about Louisiana, but it's in black font on a black background, and I'm just like, seriously, like couldn't Trailer Park edit this better or something? But I really think that, like, you were talking about how like they should have had some smaller stakes missions, and like one movie that I think that did that really well as far as comic book movies is concerned is Captain America: The First Avenger. Had that montage of just like him and like the Howling Commandos rolling through all these Nazi things. I'm like, you could have had something like that, so at least it's a little bit more believable, instead of like, I don't know, dropping Captain Boomerang in a burlap sack right before they go out and like throwing Katana in there and just being like, okay, guys, you guys are friends now.
Yeah, and also it was just I didn't understand what their mission was. Like,
yeah,
they went in. First of all, Flag was already there.
Yeah,
For some reason, like because Enchantress's brother had emerged, and so he was there, and he was going to plant a bomb.
right.
I don't understand that. And then, so the Suicide Squad flies in, and they're then supposed to rescue Waller, but they didn't know?
No, they didn't know anything. Like, everything was a surprise to them.
It was a surprise to the audience as well.
We were all finding out about it at the same time. Yeah, like it was really weird. Like when I was watching it, I turned to my wife after their helicopter went down. I'm like, who is shooting at them? Like, I'm like, seriously, like it makes no sense. I'm like, last thing we saw is like this gigantic dude throwing like, I don't know, go gadget arms at people and stuff like that. And then next thing you know, they're getting shot down, and nobody even reacts to that. They just climb out and they're like, that was weird. And I'm like, what the hell? Explain that better. And then they walk down the street and there's just like a bunch of putties from Power Rangers rolling around, and like everyone was confused, but I don't know. I mean, it was, I really do feel like it was, like I said, it was a bunch of different movies jammed into one. I want to ask you, when I was preparing for this, I wrote down like pros and cons for the movie. Like, and how big of a problem do you think it is that the first thing I wrote down in the pro column was Jai Courtney?
I actually really liked the casting by and large.
I did too, yeah. Like, but Jai Courtney was like surprisingly really good as like Captain Boomerang. Like, he didn't do anything; he just made jokes.
Well,
like,
he had the funniest moments in the entire movie.
He did, yeah. And like he had like the pink horse unicorn thing, which didn't make a lot of sense, but it was just like them trying to throw in some humor in there. And I was like, I don't know why they're doing this, but for some reason it's completely working on me. Yes, more pink unicorn. Yes.
You know, because Ayer's, the thing about Fury is, here's my theory on David Ayer. His worldview is that scene from Fury, which I'm sorry for people who haven't seen it, but there's a scene in the Fury where Brad Pitt's War Daddy character, grizzled tank commander character, forces the rookie in the group, who's like this young kid, to shoot a German, like just in front of everybody. And the kid doesn't want to do it, and he's like, "No, you're going to do it." And he basically like holds his hand like the way you'd spoon like food into a baby's mouth. And he forces him to shoot this guy. That's David Ayer's entire like filmmaking worldview. Like, grow up, shit sucks, like it's bad. You want like some heroic, bullshit with sun coming through the clouds and riding on a white horse. No, it's just blowing a dude's brains out who can't defend himself, and I'm gonna make you do it. That's how we're gonna do things. That's all his movies. Like, I tweeted this before, but I think David Ayer plays like a lot of Call of Duty, because all of his movies just there's like a fetishization of the gun and the way it looks, and even like the skins on the gun, are almost like Call of Duty skins.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know if you've seen Sabotage, which was his not. Like, it's one of the worst movies I've ever seen, and it's pretty much in line with a lot of his other stuff, which is just like it's these DEA agents, but they're actually bad guys, and that's basically all his movies. Like, I forget the one that's Keanu Reeves as like an LA undercover cop, but that's like it's the same movie. It's like his undercover cop homies are basically just like a drug gang, and that's his whole thing. Is like the good guys are the bad guys, and which ones are less bad. Mm-hmm. But all the visuals are just like, it's straight out of like Call of Duty shit. Like, it's incredible. And that's like, and so many of the shootouts in Suicide Squad were like straight out of Call of Duty, like with like the gold gun plating and like, Harley's gun that looked like a narco like Instagram thing, which I guess was like an inspiration for his shit. I mean, there was some interesting stuff in there, but it was just such a hodgepodge mess. Like, I think that in the end, he's probably the wrong direct. I thought he would have, just because of like the brutality of his style. Like after seeing Fury, I was like, oh, this could work. But there needed to be like something else in there too. There needed to be one, like a coherent story, and two, there needed to be, just something that was more fun than the last, it's like two of DC's releases, it's just so grim.
Yeah, I was actually talking with my wife earlier, and I know he's not a universally beloved director, but I kind of feel like Guy Ritchie would have done a good job with that movie, because he's so good at balancing a big cast, and he's good at like actually like kind of making a coherent narrative out of something that's nonsense. And I don't know, it probably would have gotten ruined no matter what, just because like they started freaking out once they saw the response to Batman versus Superman. But at the same time, I feel like he could have balanced that out, and especially because he utilizes music so much better than whoever made the music choices in Suicide Squad. Like the first like 40 minutes is just basically, like you said, like a series of music videos or a series of trailers. But
I was like, why did the music just start here? Like it was bizarre. Like it really just did not make any sense. It's like all of a sudden, oh, here's a song. Why?
Yeah.
Why are we doing this right now?
Well, I was sitting next to I was in a theater, and I was sitting next to a kid that was like 15 or something like that, and he was getting so hyped every time they changed a song. And like they brought on that Eminem song, and he was like, "Oh my god, I love this song!" And he turned to his dad, and his dad just looked like he had no idea where he was. And it was like, I kind of think it was for people like that. It was almost like it was ADD to the point where it was just like ridiculous. But the Call of Duty shot that I think that really was so over the top and so David Ayer was the one where they were first taking on all like the generic villains that were charging them and everything, and like they showed like an image of all of the like bullets landing on the ground, and it was like, first off, I mean, not to be a total dick, because I'm watching a movie about like, I don't know, some ancient wizardess like fighting against a bunch of like criminals who have superpowers and cannot miss shots and stuff. But like, that was too many bullets. I was like, that was so many damn bullets. I felt like that was excessive. But I guess that is kind of David Ayer, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, like the shot in Fury that reminds me the most of that movie is like the very first shot in Fury, where like it's like a tank coming out of a pit of other dead tanks and like dead bodies and stuff, and I'm like, I kind of feel like this is David Ayer's worldview.
I mean, he's that is really it. Like, Fury is a pretty good movie. I like Fury. I think it's his most coherent movie. I like End of Watch too. It's pretty good. Mm-hmm. But it's like, Fury is like, the metaphors are so thick in that movie. I mean, like it opens with like a guy riding a horse through like death. Basically, it's like a graveyard of tanks and bodies, and Brad Pitt like comes out of the fog and just like stabs him to death.
He's like, "Oh man, I'm so happy I survived this." And Brad Pitt's like, "You dead?"
Oh shit! It's like, chill thyself, David Ayer.
He has no chill. He cannot chill. I mean, he did yell "fuck Marvel" at the premiere.
I mean, that was, you gotta slow your roll there. You gotta, but shoot your shot. I appreciate the swag on that.
I gotta give him credit though. I mean, most directors in his position, where like they were basically like, "Sorry, director, you can't make this movie as well as the trailer people can." Most of those people would be like, "Fuck DC or Warner Brothers," and instead he's like going on the offensive against the other people. So I don't know. Either he really likes paychecks, or he was totally fine with what happened.
You know who's going to come out looking great from this is Geoff Johns.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's really nowhere to go but up.
Right.
And it's going to be the narrative. And I'm sure actually that he will improve these movies, because they need someone to be their Feige, basically.
Yeah.
Feige. Yeah. But that's going to be the narrative. So, Geoff Johns, turn this ship around.
Well, that was one of the questions I was going to ask you, is like, what do you like? I think we can both agree. Even though Suicide Squad was, I don't know. I mean, I would say it was like a little bit. It was better than Batman versus Superman, if only in the sense that I felt more engaged by it. But that's still not saying that much. What do you think? What do you think that they need to do to turn things around? Because I agree with you. I think Johns will at least, if they let him do his thing, will at least provide like their film universe a focus that they don't really have right now. And I don't know. I'm curious. What do you think they need?
Well, I think they need a Feige-like character, a guy who knows these characters in and out, has a love for them, understands like the core thing that makes them work, and that's really what Geoff Johns is all about. Like there's probably no one that loves DC more than Geoff Johns, and just the way he builds his stories is he's able to identify that core thing that is what makes a character that character, and that's been the thing since the 1930s, you know, all up through the Bronze Age and now, and to repackage that within the current context. And that's what, you know, that's really what they need. That's what Feige has done. That's the leadership. He's like their rudder.
Yeah.
And they need that because Zack Snyder I think Snyder is an interesting visual director.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
But he just doesn't have a feel for these. He has a feel for Batman, and he has a feel for a very specific era of Batman. You know, like he read Dark Knight Returns, and he hasn't read anything else, and he fucking loved it. Like he loved it. But Geoff Johns knows the entire. You know, he knows the entire breadth of the DC, and that's really what they need. I mean, I'm not sure how he falls in the hierarchy. You know, Zack Snyder is still executive producing like all these movies. I'm not sure how Johns affects that. I know that he co-wrote the script of Wonder Woman, and I think maybe like one of the other upcoming ones.
I don't think he's done anything as far as scripting. I think it's only Wonder Woman. But I know isn't it him and John Berg that are executive producing everything after Justice League? Like, are they going to be like the showrunners, so to speak? I think it was those two.
I believe that's the case. That's what they need. They need a guy like Johns, because Snyder, you know, for all his talents, is not the guy who you could go, hey, so, you know, tell me about Martian Manhunter. Like, what's cool about him? And then, you know, you just get a blank look. You know, Geoff Johns can tell you about that.
I feel like he would tell you in specific detail how he would burn because he hates fire, but that's like all of it.
Yeah. What do you think?
Well, I think the thing, the thing about Snyder, I think you can explain a lot of the problems with the DC universe in a weird way just by looking at how he adapted Watchmen. Because like Watchmen, it was like somebody who had read it and very specifically understands the things that people like about it, but he doesn't understand what makes these characters work and the story work.
Right.
And it's like he knows that he can recreate what was on the page, but he doesn't know how to make that work. And I kind of feel like that was even the case for Suicide Squad to a degree. Even though Margot Robbie was amazing I thought she did a fantastic job as Harley Quinn, but I really felt like her character itself was almost too fan servicey.
Yeah.
And like the Mr. J's and like the mad love shot that they had in there and just throwing all that stuff in. It kind of felt like it's like they feel like they know what the people want, but they don't know what the story needs.
Yeah, go on.
No, I was gonna say Johns. Like, I feel like Johns is the type of person who's gonna like, you know, he's not gonna be the type of person who's gonna make. I mean, one of my big problems about Snyder's movies so far in the DCU is the fact that he has kind of made Superman villain-like. Yeah. And like Geoff Johns would never do that. Geoff Johns would like, I think, probably give away several of his organs before letting that ever happen again with Superman, because he like cares about these characters and like understands them on such a like intense level that he wouldn't let like Superman become anything besides like the bastion of hope for humanity, even though he's like Superman.
Yeah, Watchmen is a great example because it's like he really did kind of Xerox the comic beat for beat.
Yeah.
But it lost like the kind of like the intrinsic, like the soul of the piece, which is this is a critique of superheroes as an idea, if they existed. But he got that, none of that came through.
Right.
Like with Snyder's adaptation, it was just like, oh, here's like a cool thing that happened, and this is a cool thing that happened, and this would be cool to show just like the comic book showed. And he doesn't understand like how to bring that out, which is, I mean, I guess the critique of Marvel would be that they don't really give their they hire these kind of like inexperienced directors in order to be able to have control of them. But in the final product, what comes out is something that is kind of like the essence of their characters translated to a much larger audience in a way that the larger audience can understand what those relationships are, and it makes sense to people.
Do you think that like the fundamental nature of like both of the universe's characters, because like that's always been the thing for DC, is that their heroes are gods. They're like these like aspirational like super beings that no one can ever contend with. While Marvel, they're like relatable. Like Spider-Man isn't like he's Peter Parker first. He's like a dude that we can relate to because we've all been that person. Do you think that makes it inherently harder to adapt than like what Marvel's doing?
I do think I don't know about harder, but I do think it makes it different for sure. But then again, I mean, you look at, this is kind of an unfair comparison, but I mean, you look at their TV work and their animated stuff, and that stuff's great.
Yeah.
So there's something missing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not entirely sure what it is, but there's something missing, and I think part of it also is, and this is something that kind of goes unspoken when you talk about Marvel movies, like how really what a small miracle like the Avengers was the ability, was the way that Whedon was able to combine like all these different tones of all these disparate characters into one movie that had all these character beats that serviced all those characters in ways that made sense. But it was one coherent movie, and Snyder just leans completely towards like the Dark Knight tone of like he's not able to combine the hopefulness of Superman and kind of like the darkness of Batman in a way that's balanced. And that's the problem. They need to find a way to do that, especially for the JLA movie.
Yeah.
You need to find a way to combine these characters in a way that allows all of their personalities to come out in the same way in the same movie. It's not easy to do.
Well, and I think I was talking to my wife about it, and she brought up a really good point, and it's that basically DC has effectively tried to shortcut the whole process. Yeah. Like, it was like they went, like, if Marvel went Iron Man, Avengers, Guardians of the Galaxy is basically how DC went. And with Marvel, it's like, at least they built up our interest in the characters first. And that's the reason why I think like something like the Avengers can work, is because viewers, I mean, not all viewers, I suppose there's some people out there who have only seen the Avengers and that is the only one they saw. But like, you go in with some level of inherent knowledge of these characters because of the previous movies. And it allows those character beats to hit more and for you to feel more for these characters without having to over-explain it. Because like, I thought that they had, I mean, like in Suicide Squad, for example, like they had two different scenes where they tried to like make us understand Harley and Deadshot in the beginning. And I don't understand why they did both of them. They had like, them beat the shit out of Deadshot, right? The very, like, basically the first scene. And I was just like, what? Why are they doing this? And then they like really fucked with like, with Harley. But I really loved the first scene that they had with Deadshot when he was like trying to get more money from the people or they wouldn't pay him. And he was like supposed to do the hit. And he's like, he's about to go sing like a bird. And I was like, okay, that's Deadshot. That's pretty great. Of course, they ruined it by making, Batman capture Deadshot in front of his child, which was definitely not a Batman sort of move, but what are you going to do?
Well, I don't understand why they didn't just do. Why not just do 6 of those? Like it was structured in a really bizarre way, which was like Waller talking to these like national security guys about various villains, and then some of them had, Deadshot had that little vignette.
Yeah.
Basically, no one else did. Harley had it in a different place.
Well, and Harley's thing was actually specifically designed to make the Joker look badass, which I thought was really strange. I was like, this like her version is the guy is like the tough guy, and she's like a crazy person who will sit on your lap if her dad or pudding tells her to.
Oh man, Jared Leto. Can you talk?
Yeah, what'd you think?
I mean, it's hard because you're saying, well, compared to Nicholson and like Heath Ledger, who like redefined the character in a way that impacted the comics, he was crappy, but he was like objectively shitty.
Right.
I thought as the like it was just all mannerism without any kind of like, he didn't seem insane.
Right, yeah.
There was none of the like, the thing about the Joker that's terrifying is kind of like the mood swings, and it was not there. Like there was nothing behind the laughter. The laughter didn't seem menacing or particularly funny. Like the Joker, to me, when he laughs, he really thinks something is funny.
Mm-hmm.
But there was none of that. It was just kind of like all these kind of weird character tics and like things that are supposed to be scary, but really weren't. It just didn't, like there was no charisma to the Joker at all.
Right. And he was kind of a predictable villain. He was just like a guy who was going around like raiding places and doing things so he can get Harley back. I'm like, that is way too like normal for the Joker.
Yeah.
And I actually feel really bad. I know supposedly they cut a crazy amount of his stuff, but I mean, like, God, like he was going around New York, like testing laughs to like make people feel uncomfortable to see like what the best laugh was, and like he was sending pig fetuses and stuff to his cast members or to his fellow cast members. I'm like, he went through all of that to like have 10 minutes on the screen.
And it was like very rote Joker. Like it was nothing. There was very vanilla Joker performance. Like,
yeah.
It was not menacing in the least. Not good.
I wonder if he had that wishes he could have those 6 months back of like living like the Joker or whatever he did. Like, I don't know. I think about that scene where God, I don't even remember what exactly the context for the situation was, but one of his like henchmen comes in, henchman number 1, the guy with the beard, comes in and is like, oh, blah, 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 blah. And then like he leans back and just starts laughing with like knives all around him. I'm like, you guys are showing him seem crazy, but he doesn't seem that crazy. He just seems like a guy who really likes tattoos and green hair.
Yeah, I mean, and I hate to. It's not fair, really, to compare it to Ledger, because that was like such an amazing performance. But Ledger did so much with just like the way he'd lick his lips.
Mm-hmm.
Like the thing about Ledger's performance is there was no vanity in it.
Right. It was a very like DIY Joker.
Yes, it was like he. There was never a feeling while watching him that he was concerned about, oh, this will look cool. This is a cool way to do this.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no, I'm gonna look. This is gonna like really. This is gonna be awkward, at the least. Whereas, like, it's like Leto just all his tics and mannerisms seem pitched to be like, oh, this will seem like really cool, right?
Right.
And it just, it just wasn't. Like, the Joker is not concerned about, seeming cool. And that's like Leto he just projected this air of a guy who is trying to look cool with all these tattoos and stuff. And I think some of that also is just kind of the way they built the character, the way the character design suggests something anti-Jokerish.
Do you kind of feel like he was unnecessary for the movie? Like, if you just cut him and, like, just had, I don't know, Harley Quinn run off for a bit, like, during, like, instead of, like, her getting dumped out of, like, the helicopter or whatever, like, how would the movie really change? There wouldn't be a whole lot of difference if there was just, like, the only scene you see is her hanging out at the club and then, like, getting taken out with Batman and the Joker and everything. Like, I don't know how the movie would really change. And I feel like they really needed to either beef his role up and make him the main villain, or like cut him entirely.
Yeah, and I think it obviously was one of those things where they're like, oh, this would really work. We should like just have him around. It didn't make sense. Like I think when you really look at it, the core conceit of having the whole thing take place over a single day should not have been done. Mm-hmm. This should have been like we were saying, they get together and then they go on a couple missions, maybe they go on a couple more missions, maybe one goes bad, and then finally they're thrust into this thing that you're not sure they're ready for.
Right.
And under that construction, the Joker can kind of be lurking on the periphery. Like you could see something he's doing on the news. He doesn't necessarily need to be like involved all the time. But when you do this thing where it's like basically a story in 12 hours, well, he's got to, if he's in the movie, he's got to be involved in some way directly. And it just didn't work.
I do kind of think that, like, as far as the movie's construction is concerned, it seemed like they were trying really hard to think about what would be cool for like people to see. Like, what would people really want to see? They want to see all this like Harley and Joker stuff, and they want to see, you know, Deadshot shooting a bunch of stuff, and they want to see all this stuff. But it kind of seemed like the actual plot was very ancillary to like the rest of the movie, which I thought was really interesting. It was that's I guess that's the case to a certain degree for like all like Marvel movies even. Oh, kind of. I don't know. It seemed like they didn't really know what they wanted to do, but they wanted to hit some of these like specific points. They're like, we want some Joker craziness where he's laughing, and we want Harley to like say puddin' a lot and run around with a mallet and a baseball bat and everything. But they didn't really know what they wanted besides that.
Yeah. The one thing I'll say about Marvel movies is the action follows character.
Right.
You know, whether you like those movies or not, that's what they do. Like, the fights that occur are there specifically to demonstrate some kind of evolution in the character.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like in Ant-Man, it's all about him discovering his powers, and like in Civil War, it's all about how far they're willing to go to stop the other side. Like, it's not just like these fights are cool. It's
they're standing for ideals.
Right. This is demonstrating something about the evolution the character is going through, and that with Suicide Squad, obviously, that's not what happens.
They're crazy. They're crazy. They do what they want.
And weirdly, like the scene in the bar towards the end of the movie before the fight, I was like, this scene should be like twice as long.
Yeah,
like this.
It was though. They actually cut like most of that, from what I understand. It was originally like a much larger scene.
That should have like I would open the movie with that.
Yeah,
like it opens in the middle of the fight. They've lost. You don't really know what happens, and they're just they're just shooting the shit. Like, that's how I would open the movie.
Oh my god, I would have liked that so much more. And then you can flash back to the getting the team together and everything. God, we need to rewrite and remake this movie. We're going to be the new editors. Like, these two guys from a podcast are going to go and be like, sorry, Trailer Park, we're taking your job. We're going to make this movie better.
I'm also... no, go ahead.
I was going to say, I actually kind of feel like somewhere in there is a good... Like, not a great movie, but like an entertaining and possibly good movie. Like, I don't know how you would get there, and it would require even more editors than they already had. And from what I understand, they had, like, the Trailer Park guys, plus they had like the guy who was like the editor who was officially credited, and then he quit, and then somebody else took over and finished. But I kind of feel like if they just sculpted it in a better way, it might have played better. But I don't know. I
totally agree with you. I mean, like, for who was it Sidewinder? I forget the name of the character. Slipknot. Like, there's a prime example of editing and pacing totally fucking up your movie. Like, the first third of the film is basically Waller going through these dossiers and introducing the characters in the movie, and then right before they're going to go on the mission, Slipknot shows up. They've never mentioned him.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't see a file on him, you saw nothing on him, so you immediately know, oh, they're going to detonate the fucking grenade in his neck. This guy's going to die. And he dies like 3.5 minutes later. You're like, oh, this... It was just so obvious.
He was on the screen during like the whole meeting with like in the Pentagon thing. But the one thing I'll say is they missed a total opportunity to make Captain Boomerang seem more awesome. Because like it kind of seemed like Captain Boomerang was trying to escape there too. But if they just made it so he was like preying upon him and was just trying to test out if the grenade thing was real, like, right. I feel like that would have been like a huge boon to Captain Boomerang's character. But I don't know. That's the newfound Jai Courtney fanboy in me speaking.
I loved the absolute best moment in the movie is when Flag, at his lowest point, he's had enough. He doesn't think he's going to get his girlfriend back, who is who the Enchantress has taken over her body, and he's just like, forget it. Like, and he disables all the grenades in their neck. He's like, you guys can all leave. And then Captain Boomerang just like scoops up like the beer in front of him and like a bowl of peanuts or something, and jumps out of the bar, and it was so good.
Yeah, that was really amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so now that Suicide Squad's out, and we've seen like the Wonder Woman trailer. We've seen Justice League footage. I don't know if we'd really even call that a trailer. It was kind of a trailer.
Right.
And we have like official people on Aquaman and the Flash, which I'm really excited about because I'm going to butcher this name. I even listened to like recordings of how to pronounce this name, and I'm still going to get it wrong. Rick Famuyiwa on the Flash, who I love. Like, Dope was amazing, and I think he'll be fantastic on it. But I'm curious, are you like buying or selling the next whatever's next for DC? Are you in on it?
I mean, I hate to say that I loved the trailer for Wonder Woman, especially after what was.
It was great.
It was great. It was great. And I liked the trailer for Suicide Squad too. Like, I'm buying. I think if they let those directors, if they hire them for the right reasons and they let them do what they need to do, there's a lot of reasons to hope. Like, I loved the Wonder Woman trailer. I was like, wow, this is good. Mm-hmm. Seems like it's actually the character. Wow. And the action scenes look great. I'm very hopeful.
Yeah. The only thing I would get rid of is I really hate her theme. Like the metal like guitar is playing. And I'm just like, I don't understand why that's it. I mean, it played during the Doomsday fight too in Batman vs Superman. Listen to that. I was just like, God, I hope this isn't Wonder Woman's theme. And then it played in the trailer. I was like, no. But like the Justice League trailer was okay. I thought that I thought they were really trying hard to make it funny. But I wanted to ask you actually, do you watch Arrow or The Flash?
I do watch them. I'm not caught up, but I do watch them.
I'm way behind on Arrow because Arrow's gotten really bad. But The Flash I generally like, even though I'm not really fond of the direction they headed in the second half of the season. But do you think they made a mistake by splitting the TV and movie universes?
I think in the case of Flash, maybe.
Right.
Although, I mean, I forget the name of the actor now for the movies, but he's
Ezra Miller.
I think this could be like at least their most interesting casting choice yet, because he's got an offbeat charm to him that I would not expect for the character. Mm-hmm. That could be really interesting. And some of the stuff, like, I mean, they are trying to make it funny, but like, I kind of like the scene with Affleck and he, where he's trying to convince him to join the JLA. I really liked the scene of, where Batman and Wonder Woman are just kind of talking about like what's going to happen. And those are the things that DC movies under Zack Snyder have generally missed. Mm-hmm. Those kind of, I mean, I'll put my cards on the table as a guy who my favorite part of like any Bendis comic book is when
breakfast.
Yeah, it's breakfast. Where like Avengers sitting around and talking about stuff.
Yeah.
Like those are some of my favorite moments like in comics. But you need stuff like that. And if they can bring that out in the upcoming movies, then that's all for the better.
I was going to say, I think that like the scene that you could never, out of all the Marvel movies, the scene that you definitely can't imagine seeing in any of the DC movies would be the shawarma scene.
Yes.
And it would be so like weird in those because it just wouldn't fit. But I completely agree. I actually think that Ezra Miller, like the way that they've kind of shown him in the trailer, even though I like Grant Gustin a lot in that role, I do think having some youthful enthusiasm could maybe disarm some of the more edgy and intense stuff. And I just hope that Zack Snyder doesn't pummel him to death with like intensity. Like, okay, we're going to have you only read The Dark Knight Returns. Like, that doesn't even have the Flash in it. No, you have to read Dark Knight Returns. There is no other comic for anyone to read. But I don't know. It'll be really interesting to see how it plays out. But I'm on it. I'm in on the future just because I do think the trailers look pretty good, and I like the choices that they've made for directors. I kind of feel like they need to get out of their own way, and it's like they have too many cooks, and that's why I hope that Geoff Johns has like a strong pull with everybody else. But we'll see. I mean, it's kind of interesting to think that this dude who came up as basically, well, first he was like Richard Donner's like assistant, and then he was like basically if a kid on the internet was writing fan fiction for DC characters, they're like, how about you do that, but we pay you for that? And he's like, this is dope, I'm going to do that. And now he's running DC movies.
It's amazing.
It's really cool. I mean, like, he's a nice guy. I'm interested to see how he does there, but So looking at 2016 in general, we've had Deadpool, we've had Civil War, we've had Batman versus Superman, we've had Suicide Squad, and Doctor Strange is coming out this year. Do you feel like we like the comic book movie, the superhero movie, is still in a strong place, or do you feel like we're going the Steven Spielberg Western route already?
I mean, I feel like we're still going strong, and I think the box office bears that out.
Yeah,
I think you can certainly tap out the well by continuing to make shitty movies. I don't think we're there.
Right.
I don't think we're all the way there yet. Like, I think Marvel would need to put out, like, let's say Strange is not good.
Mm-hmm.
They come out with something else that is, that is not good, and then you'd start to question it, because they've really had a kind of unbroken string of hits, both theatrically and critically, like, where they just seem to have have broken the code of, okay, this is what people want from our movies, and we're just going to deliver it again and again and again. But like all good things come to an end. Like this is an era, and at some point, people are going to tire of this.
Yeah.
So
well,
I think we've got to. I think the end. What are we in phase 2? Is this the end of phase 2 right now?
I think that Civil War was the beginning of phase 3. I could be wrong about that. I think Ant-Man was the official end of phase 2, or Age of Ultron was. And like now we're in phase 3.
I think this, obviously it's going to be a critical time. But at the same time, like they're introducing, like, there's so much enthusiasm for Black Panther, and there's so much enthusiasm for Captain Marvel. Like, I really feel like there's still a lot of legs left.
Oh yeah.
And DC just needs to get its act together. Put out 2 good movies, and that nobody's talking about this anymore.
My favorite part about the whole like Marvel versus DC thing is like, I'm not one who's like plays sides. Like, if they made a good DC movie, I would be all about it. Like, I would love it. Like the Suicide Squad movie actually made me really wish they would make a Secret Six movie, because I just feel like that would be amazing. But the thing that I think is the most telling about the two is the fact that DC struggles to get Superman right, and Marvel can somehow get like Arnim Zola to be awesome. Like my wife loves Arnim Zola. She's always quoting him. She's like, "First correction, I'm Swiss."
Yes.
And I'm just like, oh my god, this is hilarious. But like they have Ego the Living Planet coming in the Guardians of the Galaxy 2.
It's just madness.
It's crazy.
Fucking Living Planet in a movie. I mean, it's bizarre. And it's interesting because if you look at the narrative, right before Iron Man came out, when it was in production, and Batman Begins was already a hit,
right?
Like, there were all the stories about Marvel's slate of movies was second-rate characters,
right?
Iron Man and Captain America. Nobody really knows who, like, people know them, but they don't know them. Meanwhile, DC is coming out with like the heavy hitters. They've got Superman, they got Batman. And really, that logic turned out to be completely wrong, because if anything, starting with Captain America and Iron Man, these characters that people know but they don't really know, gave Marvel like this really wide latitude to kind of like establish the narrative of those characters in ways that have frankly like influenced the comic books. I mean, if you read the comic books, it's almost like 60% movie Tony, and 40% like comic book Tony. Whereas, DC wasn't, they really were not able to do that. They couldn't do that. So it's an interesting evolution.
Yeah. I'm just thankful that they made the Vision happen in the movies, just so we'd get a Vision solo series, because that Tom King series or Tom King, Gabriel Hernandez Walta, and Jordi Belair is amazing, and that's just it's so good. It's
mind blowing. I mean, it's one of the very, very, very few comics that, on the first page of the first issue, I was like, "Oh, this is fucking good." Like, I just blew me away, and he's got this way of using the narrative voice in really in a way that amplifies the kind of like the existential dread of the series. Like he does this thing in the first issue where it's like the neighbors come over to the Vision's house, and it all seems like fairly normal and then I think this is where I was like, oh shit, this is real. It's either like right at the end of the first page or somewhere right there in the second page where he goes, later on, Vision will burn their house down and they will die in it. I was like, whoa, what? Like,
that is amazing. Yeah, no, I remember when the first time I had no interest in buying it. I was just like, I don't know what the fuck this is. Like, what the Vision? He's getting a solo series, and then this one comic retailer I follow on Sketch's account is they tweeted out a preview of it, and it showed like the Vision family, and I'm like, what the fuck? The Vision has a family? How is that even possible? But I was like, I'll pick this up, and then like when the same line, when I read that line, I was just like, this is not a normal Vision comic. What is this comic?
And I put this in my my profile at King at the Ringer, which you helped me with, which I'm eternally grateful for.
Oh,
but the page, there's from right after the neighbor's visit, where Vision and Mrs. Vision are talking about the correct way to address to say that it was nice that they came, or they seemed nice versus they seemed kind.
Mm-hmm.
Just that the way he uses an exploration of language to like enforce the otherness of the Vision and the kind of his want to understand humanity and how sad that is, like, and how tragic, because humans don't even understand themselves, and here's this android trying to understand what makes a human being, and it just is crushing in a really kind of quiet way.
Mm-hmm.
And this is another thing I said to him that I said to Tom that I didn't end up making to the profile, but it's like he quotes Merchant of Venice in Vision, and he quotes, I think, maybe Ulysses or James Joyce, like in Sheriff of Babylon, and it's like somehow he did those two things, and it's not totally pretentious.
Right. Yeah. It just works. Yeah.
It works somehow.
I think the interesting, like, his stuff is so interesting because it's like, it's so, you kind of want to, I talk about this a lot on the podcast, but you always kind of want to pigeonhole things into genres, but you look at like, Sheriff of Babylon, or you look at, the Vision, like the Vision isn't like, obviously it's not a superhero book. Like, what is it? Is it like a horror book? Is it like it's like a tragedy, but I mean, like, you can't really call it a tragedy. I guess you could call it a tragedy, but I mean, it's like, he has such an interesting way of bringing like the sad and powerful parts of life to life on the page that it's kind of ungenreable in a weird way.
It really is. And he's so good at making it all action, making it all show, don't tell. Like there's never any think boxes in his
right.
Comics. It's all with character and with dialogue, and it's like so good.
Did you read the issue of Sheriff of Babylon that was just God, I can't remember the main character's name when he was hanging out just drinking with
Chris.
Yeah. Chris was just drinking with God, I forgot what is it Abu Huraim?
The wife.
Yeah, the wife. Yeah, when they're like just sitting there drinking, and like that whole thing was just them having a conversation for like the entire issue. And that was like one of the best comics I've read in like the last year. And it helps that Mitch Gerads is like an amazing artist, and he does great character acting, but damn, like that, I didn't expect to read that or like that, but it was fantastic.
Yeah, there's another the other scene that really got me in that book, and I forget which issue it is when he's got the and I'm always forgetting the names now, but he's got like the Shia cop staying with him. And the CIA guys come because they want to talk to him about contact he made with, like, that they think he made with some terrorist from out of the country, blah, blah, blah. And the way he escalates it from, you know almost right away that something bad's going to happen, but you don't know how bad. And it takes place over like a number of pages where it's like, it goes from, okay, I'll go with you, but what is this about? But hold on, like what, like, and then his wife comes out, and then you just know that like something really bad is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And just his ability to pace scenes like that, like his pacing is really amazing.
It really is.
And like on the Vision, even there, like I think something about like working with Tom is like artists do their some of their best work when they work with him.
Well, I think one of the big things for him is like he actually gives them the ability to like be storytellers in their own right, and like he doesn't make this like I think most writers to a certain degree have like some breathing room in the script so they can actually like tell a story the way that they want to. But like I feel like it's a real collaboration in like in a rare way. It's like the magic of comics is like the marriage of writing and art, and like that one, like his books, especially Babylon and The Vision, are like you can just tell those teams work so well together and that they bring out the best in each other. And it's because like they trust each other to tell the story the way that they need to. And it works so well.
Yeah, it really does. Like I really love his stuff.
So last question. Well, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say last question before I get into 5 random questions is I one thing I want to talk about is, you know, with Suicide Squad coming out and with Dawn of Justice is like there's been, well, I mean, the DC fans have been kind of crazy, like petitioning to have Rotten Tomatoes shut down because of its evil slander against Suicide Squad. I mean, like that's like crazy. But at the same time, like it's really interesting seeing some of the fans go like hardcore against each other. Like this one person, I don't know how he keeps showing up in my Facebook feed. I don't know why he does, but he like is such a DC lifer that he'll take like these tiny factoids, like Dawn of Justice had higher audience ratings than Civil War in the Ukraine. Take that, Marvel! Like he's like posting this shit, and I'm just like, what the fuck? Like why? Like is that? Do you think that's like standard like Yankees versus Red Sox rivalry type stuff? Do you think that's comic book fan stuff, or do you think that's just kind of like the way the internet works today? What is that? It's weird.
It's all those things. It's all those things. I mean. It's just all those things. It's like fanboyism is an ancient tradition, and I think it's just amplified by the internet, where various fanboys and fangirls can find each other and kind of like stoke each other's fires of hatred. I mean, there's people that will rep for like Zune versus iPod still. That's just...
My wife's coworker actually like totally pulls for the Zune still. He's like, underrated piece of technology.
Listen. There's people out here that will rep for the Zune 100%. Like I made a Zune joke once on Twitter, and there's motherfuckers popping up. Like, listen, I got to tell you, the Zune, like, great. The software, fantastic, so easy to use. You really don't understand like what you were missing. It was great. You know, like people rep for stuff, and you know the internet gives them a medium to do that. And Marvel DC has been a rivalry that's been going on for a number of years. It's part of the fabric of the comics culture. Just the fact that like it blows my mind that like David Ayer would get up on stage and say "fuck Marvel,"
right?
And it's not the first time that like things like this have happened. Like there's a Zack Snyder interview from the Hollywood Reporter from a number of years ago where he like shits on. He's like, it's fucking Captain America. They're gonna fucking use Captain. What the fuck is this? Like, like Iron Man. Who like? And it's just, I feel like once you are drawn to a side, you
become entrenched.
You become entrenched, and I think it's just hard to resist taking those shots. I think it's honestly, it's largely harmless.
Yeah, no, it is, and it just like the fuck Marvel thing just reminds me of Masai Ujiri when he was like the fuck Brooklyn line.
I just like it's not a win. Like there's nothing to be gained there. There's no value added by screaming fuck Marvel except like among. It's red meat for like DC hardcore heads. I'm
also like at the premiere, it's a funny place to drop it. It'd be one thing if it was just like he walked into like some theater in like Chicago and just yelled that. But like I'm guessing a lot of people in that room have collected paychecks from Marvel at some point in their life. And, and it's funny that he dropped that. But I don't know. I don't know why it is, but there's something in my head that has like I can totally understand like hating the Pittsburgh Steelers with a fiery passion, but like. For some reason, I look at Marvel and DC, I'm like, just, you get, like, good, if you get good things from both of them, it's an ideal state. Yeah. I find it, for some reason, that type of fandom where you're just like, it's like just saying, I can only drink Pepsi for the rest of my life. Fuck all other beverages. Water, I don't need it. It's another beverage. I'm Team Pepsi. And it's weird to me.
You just look at the mastheads of the two companies. There's so much, people cross the lines all the time.
Totally.
Jim Lee started at Marvel. You know, like you can just go down the lines and people that have worked at both companies.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just part of like the culture of comics,
right?
So like that's something intrinsic about the medium that's like larger than the people involved in it.
Totally. It is really fascinating. I think it's such an interesting little like view into the world, and it's like it is no different than like Yankees versus Red Sox or like
it's the same.
Yeah, and it's still like it still bewilders me sometimes. But okay, so let's end with 5 questions. I'm going to touch on a number of different subjects, but first question I have for you is on a 1 to 10 scale, how excited are you for the upcoming Knicks super team?
Oh, come on.
You don't like the term super team?
I pray that health stays with us.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I mean, this is obviously going to be the most talent.
It's pretty cool.
Parentheses on paper that the team has had in a while.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm concerned about obviously health. Derrick Rose's ongoing sexual assault cases is troubling, like to say the least. Like if you read those court documents, I don't know, they seem pretty like I could see that being true.
Right.
Like the things in there, like I could see that maybe that's what happened, and it's troubling. So you know, like I'll get more excited like as we roll into preseason and I start seeing them. Like you don't understand. Like I've talked myself into, you know, teams with like fucking Al Harrington and you know, like
Landry Fields.
I've talked Landry Fields rookie year, man.
Yeah, he was promising, and then they had to do the poison pill contract.
Listen, I will go to the grave saying that if Mike D'Antoni, if they didn't break up the team to get Carmelo and they kept Mike D'Antoni and let him just do his thing, he was playing the starters too much.
Mm-hmm.
But I think he turns Landry Fields into a serviceable NBA player.
Yeah.
Like, you don't put up those numbers that he did just kind of like on accident. It's the same thing with the Lim thing, where it's taken a while for him to like find that in himself, where it's like a replicable, where he can go out and be like a contributing NBA player, like
rather than just a system thing.
Right. But you know, people always say, "Oh, well, it's D'Antoni, it's the system." Yeah, but the system highlights that you're capable of doing something.
Right.
Now, can you stretch that out into the NBA as a whole? And I wish they had done that. I will talk myself into this team as we get closer to the start date.
I feel like
it's like a 6.
What's that?
Question. A 6 out of 10 now.
6 out of 10. I think Joakim Noah is going to be one of those players. Like, he seems like the ultimate player you hate to see your team play against, but player that you love having on your team.
I think he is exactly that. Like, I will absolutely love having him.
Tyler Hansbrough is like the lowest form of that player. And he was on the Pacers, and he was, oh my god, you kind of hate him being on your team because you just feel like he's going to fight somebody during practice and he's going to regret it.
My favorite thing about Tyler Hansbrough is the way when he comes into the game, he's got like this face that's like, I think I made this joke once, but like he always looks like he's just looking up from the Coke mirror. Like a super thick rail of Coke, and now he's like up and like, okay guys, let's go, I'm ready. That's Tyler Hansbrough.
That is. Okay, next question. What's the comic you're most excited about reading now? Like, what's the best comic you're reading?
The Vision. Honestly, it's probably the Vision still.
That's a good choice. I honestly like. I'm sad that it's ending at 12 issues, but at the same time, I think it's like the right choice. I kind of like that they're doing like these season type things, because when it's eventually collected into like a 12 issue hardcover or something, that will be an awesome volume.
Yeah, the obverse of that is what I'm kind of really depressed at what's going on with all the mutant characters in the Marvel universe right now. But that's like another much more complicated.
Do you mean just like the actual comics, or the fact they're getting erased in a few months?
Yeah, I mean it's like, it's depressing. That was my shit. The X-Men, that was what got me into comics by and large. So to see them just marginalized in this way, like, who the fuck is repping for the Inhumans?
No one
likes the fucking Inhumans. I mean, yeah, Black Bolt is dope,
Yeah, because he can't talk, and as soon as like he does talk, everything breaks. But
yeah, you just know it's gonna be the shit is it's on when he says something. Like it's gonna be on.
right.
Like like nobody gives a fuck about like Karnak is okay. Like nobody fucking reps for the Inhumans. Nobody cares about them.
Oh, man.
Why are we turning over the keys to them?
This will be the ultimate test as to whether or not somebody will go into your Twitter mentions against everything. Because, like, if they come after you for the Zoom, I feel like they could come after you for the Inhumans. They're like, well, let me tell you about the merits of Medusa.
Yeah, I want to hear from these people. I want to hear from these people who are like, yo, listen, Black Bolt, Black Dagar, or whatever. He's my guy. I, like, forget it. No.
Blackagar Boltigan.
Blackagar Boltigan. Whatever. Listen, forget it. I don't understand why we're letting these guys take over. Why are we killing off the mutants again? Although to be fair, this is not new. The Marvel, as I'm as paranoid as anyone that this is involved. This has something to do with the movies. I think it clearly does. Yeah. It just makes sense. When you don't own all of something, you're gonna favor the things that you own all of. But they've been trying to kill off the mutants for, like Mutant Massacre was like, well, we got to get rid of a lot of these mutants, and then, no more mutants is another link in the chain, and then
the Cassandra Nova wiping out like millions.
It's like they've been trying to kill mutants for a while. There's too many of them. We get it, but like the Inhumans is not the answer. Fuck the Inhumans.
Yeah, it is really interesting because I grew up an X-Men fan too, and it was like it's weird that I don't read any of them. It really says a lot about the state of them that I just like don't even like pick up a new issue when it comes up, like a new #1. Yeah, but I don't know. I'm definitely not picked up Inhumans though. Inhumans were great when they had the Paul Jenkins and like Jay Lee miniseries, but like if you do like a 12-issue maxi series, that's one thing. But if you have like 4 different ongoings and then base your event around like the precognitive powers of like one Inhuman, no one's gonna care. Just no one likes the Inhumans.
No one likes the Inhumans.
No one does. I don't even think Black Bolt likes them.
I don't think he does. Like Black Bolt needs to show up like every 8 months to try and stop the Hulk, and that's it. Like that's all I want from Black Bolt in my life.
No, he can go to Illuminati meetings where he just nods at people.
That's it. And then something like Galactus shows up and Black Bolt tries to scream at him, like, and that happens like once a year.
Wait, Maximus is pretty good. I like Maximus.
Yeah, but he's like, he gets to just be crazy and like manipulative and shit.
Yeah, he'd be a great David Ayer character.
Yeah.
Okay, third question. What character are you most excited to see on your squad in a competitive Overwatch match, and which one are you least excited to see? Least excited is the important one. I feel like I know most. I feel like I know your answer. Am I on offense or defense? Okay, so let's see. We're gonna go with your attacking in Hollywood.
Ooh, Hollywood. So I would not want to see Symmetra at all. And I would not want to see Torbjorn. I just don't want to see any turrets on attack.
Right.
And I feel like I see that a little bit.
Yes.
Symmetras, you see them a lot on like Route 66 where it's like, well, I'll get the teleporter up, I guess, like on defense rather, but it just never works out. Like I don't want to see Symmetra. Like she's been nerfed anyway, and like I don't want to see her. So Symmetra, Torbjorn, and I say 3 would probably be Hanzo, just because like he's probably bad. Like a good Hanzo, a really good Hanzo, who I've been playing with a good Hanzo lately, can absolutely change games.
But the average Hanzo is just me like dicking off in a corner somewhere. It's
just going to be garbage, and I'm never going to hear his ultimate. I'm just not going to hear anything. It's like, and then so like Widowmaker is up there as well.
Right. Anna is like at the bottom of my list for everything. I just assume that if I see Anna, I'm going to lose on my team.
If I see Anna, I pick Zenyatta, and I'm just like, well, I'm going to. I kind of feel like a thing that's happening now is people pick Anna in order to like emotionally force someone else to pick a healer because they know.
So they know it's going to be useless?
Yeah, so that they can then switch with, like, no moral repercussions to, like, Soldier 76 or something.
Yeah,
Because
it's like they know that somebody else on the team has a character they want. They're like, "Fuck you, I'm taking Anna, so you'll switch."
Yeah. It's like Anna and Zenyatta is actually like that's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been multiple times where it's like I see Anna and I'm like, fuck, okay, I'll go Zenyatta just because I know we're gonna need healing because she's gonna be garbage,
Mm-hmm.
and then she'll switch. It's like no, what? And then you pick pick fucking Zarya, which I wanted to do.
Anna's playing you. She's playing you.
Fuck Anna.
So,
I don't want.
So who's the team or a teammate you'd want to see on your team? Reinhardt?
I want to see Lucio more than anyone.
Is that so you can just not play support?
It's partially so I cannot play support, and also because like I know that we have a good chance of winning if I see Lucio.
Yeah, I never really understand. I mean, I know that situationally there's choices why you would want like a Zenyatta or like a Mercy, but I don't really like his like passive healing is just so much better than anybody else. Yeah, like I don't know why you wouldn't do that. It just kills me when somebody's just like, I'm gonna be Anna. I'm like, I hate you so much. I'm gonna play Lucio, but screw you.
Well, it's like on Hanamura or Nepal or any kind of point, capture the point game. It's like he can be on the other side of a wall, healing his team and not taking damage. And he's so hard to fucking kill.
Plus, you can like blow people off the edge and you're in the shrine.
That's one of the best feelings in the game. Period is environmental kills with Lucio, and then the speed boost to get through choke points like really fast.
Oh, yeah,
really really useful.
It's so like one of my favorite moments I've had is I actually knocked off 3 members of the team on God, what is the level in Nepal that has like the end like the like big center spot for the objective?
It's like the middle the temple map of Nepal.
Yeah, the temple map. Yeah, I was Farah and I did the concussive blast and shot 3 people off the edge at the same time. So it made me very very happy. Okay, fourth question for you. What's the question you think you've gotten the most times in your Ask the Maester columns?
Ooh, where's Gendry?
Really?
Yeah, that and like what happens if Tommen dies? Like who becomes king?
I would have bet anything that would have been something R plus L equals J like related, just because even like non-book readers like me knew about that beforehand, and it just seemed like something that people are interested in. But I guess you wouldn't have the answer, so what's the difference?
Yeah. Well, the answer is that's an interesting thing because actually most show readers, the sense I got was that most show readers did not even know that understanding who Jon's parents were
was a big deal.
Was a thing to be kind of puzzled over. Like I remember I waited until the Purple Wedding to really bring it up. Season 4, which is really when they kind of first introduced it as an idea when Oberyn shows up and is like has that kind of like long discussion with Tyrion, like and talking about how Rhaegar Targaryen abandoned his wife, my sister, and like all this, like just kind of laid the foundation. So I waited a little bit, and then after the Purple Wedding, I was like, okay, well, here's the thing. Here's Oberyn telling the story about Rhaegar, walking away from his wife, and abducting Lyanna. What do we really know about Jon's parents through this prism? And I remember when I first brought that up in a column, people were like, what? Wait, what? Like, hold on. Wait, are you telling me that Ned might, like, no people, there were a lot of people who had not thought about it at all. It was not even on the table. And so, that was not a question I got a lot. Believe it or not.
That is surprising. I know you got a lot of Clegane Bowl questions at the in the last season, although I had never heard of that, and then my friend sent me a YouTube video of that, and it was like the most batshit crazy video I've ever seen in my entire life. It was like I don't even know, like the person had to be on so much drugs when they were doing that, but it was it got me really hyped for Clegane Bowl, and it didn't happen. I guess it still could happen. No, not really. No.
Yeah. It could happen, but I said this in the
you just don't think it's gonna happen.
It's too neat. It's a little. It might happen in the show, but for the books, it feels like a little too neat for George.
Yeah, it's true, and he's not really like hanging that thread. I mean, the Hound's there, but he's not really like pursuing like revenge against his brother or anything like that. But okay, last question.
Sure.
Now that it wrapped, last time we talked, Secret Wars was just starting, and it's finished. And I'm curious, what was your final take on Secret Wars? How did you feel about the Hickman Esad Ribic extravaganza?
You know what, I liked it actually. I haven't read a lot of stuff outside the core series, but I thought it was okay. I liked it. It was coherent, which for Hickman I think is important.
Very important. I saw your tweet about East of West the other day, and I was like, yes, I agree. It can be hard to read as you're reading issue by issue.
I don't know what's going on in East of West. I 100% there's great ideas in there. The art is fucking beautiful. I'm gonna wait till it's all over. I need an endpoint with a lot, and that's the same thing with his Secret Avengers stuff. Once you read it all together at the end, you're like, oh, this is great. Yeah. His Avengers run, his initial Avengers run, when he first started, that whole the life on other planets and the builder shit. The first 4 issues of that were so fucking confounding.
I hated it. I hated it so much I dropped it right after that.
I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? And there was 50 members of that Avengers team. So from the standpoint of knowing that Hickman has a tendency to be incoherent at times, I thought it was fine. I thought it was good. There were some legitimately fun moments. I liked that the Thing was the wall, and that was really interesting. It was fine. I liked it.
I loved I was a really big fan of it, and I actually the moment where Thanos had his spine removed by Doom. Yeah. Was that was a fist pump moment, if you can even have those in comics. And I don't know, I just think it's funny that Secret Wars was a distillation of everything he did at Marvel, where he's just he just finds ways to jam everything he likes in there. He has lots of Black Panther, he has lots of Namor, he has lots of Doom. Of course, somehow the Maker gets in there, the Reed Richards from the Ultimate Universe, and it's it all works. It works great, and it's funny. I was reading his Ultimates run for the first time the other day. And it was just filled with Maker, and I'm like, oh, this makes sense now. Yeah. I didn't make a lot of sense to me that he just got jammed in there randomly before, but it works surprisingly well as a reread. When you read it all together, it's awesome. And at East of West too, I actually reread the entire series for. I was interviewing Hickman, and I interviewed Dragata, and they that book works so well as a whole story. But month to month, there's sometimes where I'm just wait, what is happening here exactly?
It's because he'll bring back stuff that was that he teased issues ago and that didn't seem important, and it's when you read it all in one sitting, you're like, oh, okay, yeah.
He is there's going to be people who get into comics 20 years from now who are just reading through all the Hickman stuff. They're like, this shit is amazing, and there's only people who have faint recallings of reading it issue by issue, and they're just I don't remember any of that.
And then, there's another, just from a purely logistical standpoint, the great thing about catching up on Secret Wars, all at once after the fact, was the delays just made it, I didn't understand where I was.
Right, yeah.
It's there's comics, there were comics coming out that were obviously after Secret Wars because the world is back, and I didn't, and then there were comics that had not yet gotten to that point. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't understand where the universe was as a whole. It just didn't make sense to me, and the delays just compounded that problem.
Yeah, the timeline was even crazier than usual for Marvel, which is saying a lot.
Yeah, so being able to read it all in one sitting it made it really good. I enjoyed it.
My buddy, who's the most hardcore comic fan I know, he actually had each issue out for when the new issues would come out, and he'd reread every issue before getting into it. I'm just so you've read the entire series 8 times before getting into the 9th issue? That is hardcore.
Hickman does, and Hickman does those fist pump when Thor threw his hammer around the sun, and in what was the Infinity. I was like, yes.
Yeah, he does some pretty rad fist pump moments.
Yeah.
Anyways, well, that's all the questions I have for you. Thank you so much for coming on, Jason. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat.
Anytime.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Off Panel with guest Jason Concepcion.
You can find Jason on Twitter at @network, that's NETW3RK, and his writing on The Ringer. Don't forget to like the show on Facebook at /sketched, that's SKTCHD, follow it on Twitter at @sketchcomic, or follow me at @slicefriedgold. Want more from Off Panel? Subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher, and give the show a rating and review while you're at it. Also, I'm launching a new comics-adjacent newsletter called The Crossover. Make sure to subscribe at bit.ly/The Crossover Newsletter if you want more writing from me. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode.